All right, hello and welcome to Cinescapes Under the Skin edition. And
You.
today I'm Isobel Salamon and I'm having a chat with Maureen Foster, who has authored the book Alien in the Mirror. Hello, Maureen.
Hi, Isabel.
How are you
Nice
today?
to meet you. I'm very good. It's morning here. It's very sunny, and I'm ready to start the interview and start the day.
Fantastic. I
Yeah,
mean, we're lucky to have, a sunny day here in Edinburgh as well, which isn't always as reliable as you get in LA.
it's a treat. Right. Okay.
It is indeed. So maybe if we just get started today, I'd love to have a chat about you describe your motivation for writing on the film as one of love for the character and her journey and your relatable embrace of her. Can you speak to how you felt when you first watched the film?
When I first watched the film, um, I was compelled by the performance. When I first watched the film, I didn't, like many people who watch it, I didn't know exactly what was going on. Only by the second, third, fourth viewing did I start to put the pieces together. But from the very beginning, it was the compelling performance and how she drew me in, and how I felt connected to her, and sympathetic to her.
It's an utterly compelling performance. And I know I read that you sort of drew inspiration from when you were sitting in a Jerry Maguire 20th year sort of anniversary and you heard Cameron Crowe say, write that song that's in your head. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Oh, write the song that's in your head. It was the viewings of the film, and um, the love for the character, and you that's what was driving it, is the idea to somehow share how compelling her journey was for me. How compelling it was for me that she came to this place, an alien planet where everyone around her was alien, a complete unknown, and ends up halfway through the story jumping off a cliff. The courage, the curiosity, the desire to make something more of her life, see what was out there, as opposed to being a soldier on a mission who had no agency. She, halfway through the story, becomes someone who's completely free. Um, I found it to be one of the most compelling stories of a woman's journey, that I'd ever seen in a book or a film. So that's what I wanted to share.
It really is. It's such a different exploration that we don't normally see that often. And I guess I love your reference to the elegant creepiness that sort of the alien character actually embodies. And tell me a little bit about why you think Glazer chose to portray aliens in this manner.
Um, that's a good question. In the book, the alien is not someone they manufactured. The aliens are animals. They're animals. They're wolf-like. And in the book, so she's a wolf-like animal that has been shaved and surgically altered to walk upright. And at great pain and discomfort to her, she then resembles a human who can drive around and lure these men. I could see that Glazer took a completely different approach in making her something manufactured that could be aesthetically beautiful. And I think that in the book, the author references the fact that she looked odd, whereas Glazer went another way, because the aesthetic of the beautiful alien in the film is part of the aesthetic of the film, which is beauty, the cinematography, the color, the use of red, the music. It's all governed by beauty. So he had to take a completely different tack on how to create her and how she would appear to fit with that aesthetic. And it is that mesmerizing aesthetic that pulls you into the movie, the beauty. It's definitely pervasive.
It definitely is, and
Yeah.
I've got the book next to me right here as well, Michael Faber's book, and you're right about that whole animal idea, and we'll get back into that shortly. But it is this whole thing of Scarlet is chose to be shown as the familiar alien, and I suppose I found it striking in both your book and then also in the film itself that they're showing her behaving in this way that her movements are strange within this familiar body. They're showing her in makeup, but she's not okay in that makeup. And it's sort of this portrayal of the indifferent femme. And how does that speak to the importance of feminism and how feminism is being portrayed in sort of the world?
Interesting. Because he chose to make her beautiful and not odd, it makes the feminist underpinning for me all the more intense and dramatic, because the alien culture, the alien overseers knew that they had to make her utterly beautiful and irresistible. So there couldn't be a person who was a little off in the car. It had to be the ultimate sort of notion of beauty in this culture. And it makes the whole message of her objectification as in her mission, because her job is to lure men and be beautiful and be irresistible and lure men. So it makes it all the more impactful that she desires to have something more. She wants to see what's out there for her as a, I should say, human, because she's not human, but she wants to have a human experience, not the experience of a glamorous creature. She wants that human experience that all women want. No woman wants to be objectified and live as an object. You want self-realization. This is what she seeks. She's curious. She seeks to see what's out there. She seeks to be self-realized. And somehow when she's that beautiful, it makes it all the more poignant, because that's what interesting. Her interest is in living her life and seeing what she can be, what she can do, what she can feel.
Yeah, she is like this sponge in a way, sort of like this baby sponge who's just
Yes,
spurted out there and is trying to grab at different emotions and test the waters a little bit.
yes, everything from a piece of cake to touching a man and being touched, to experiencing love, which I think she is very fascinated by. Having lured all these men to her, she's got to be wondering all that time, what is it they want? What is so compelling that they're getting to a van with a total stranger? What is this they want? And I'm pretty curious. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm very curious as well. You just want to keep following her journey.
yeah,
So if we jump back into the whole idea of how different the book is to the actual film,
yeah,
and this whole concept of sort of the aliens' protagonist journey and the humans live like livestock, and this whole concept of the character and how she became who she is, just being taken out of the whole sort of narrative.
that's right.
And why do you think Glazer chose to take this different direction?
You know, there's a couple of things there. Had he included that whole theme of the aliens capturing humans to treat them as livestock, fatten them up, and then eat them, that's a whole kind of a vegan manifesto that is a whole other subplot. And to tell you the truth, it makes me think of what Ridley Scott did with Blade Runner and their screenwriters. They took out major subplots in the Philip K. Dick book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And they stuck with what was going to be most cinematic and what was the heart of the story about these androids and what were they really like. And this main character and and his journey, the journey of Rick Deckard in Blade Runner. That's what Glazer, in my mind, showed to do as well. The main thing, the thrust of it, the focus is the journey of the main character. And in 2 hours, you don't really have the time to develop these subplots without taking too much time away from the protagonist's journey. So you go with that. So Glazer dropped the whole scenario of the aliens and the breeding of the humans as cattle, basically, and it went just for the focus on the character. And the other thing is that they originally had a lot of other elements from the book, like an alien couple arriving on Earth and engaging with townspeople and scenes in the bars in the town, and people in the town going, that couple is really odd. What's up with them? And all of that, context. But once they couldn't raise the 30 or so million pounds to do that wide film that they originally had in the script, and they had to, as Tessa Ross at Film 4 said, could you possibly reimagine the film at about a half the budget? And they did. And the way they did it, partly the way they did it, was to eliminate all that context, focus on her journey. And you see how minimalist the movie is in that way. We're with her all the time, we're following her, and that enabled them to not only drop the budget, but to make a film that is very personal and focused and on one woman's journey.
Yeah, and it makes it, in my mind, so much more powerful, because it does. So. When you strip something back so innately, then all you're left with is sort of one key concept. And I feel like with Glazer and with everything that you've touched on, it seems to just be connection, and how something that's alien can connect with the world, can connect with people, can create with a whole different species. And I think that's just a really fascinating way to look at it.
It is to deal with an alien and find that connection you have with an alien, and with her thinking of humans as aliens, and seeing that she has a drive to have more, to be human-like. He did succeed. And ironically, the film, as you feel too, I feel the film is better for this personal focus at half the budget. So, perhaps it was a blessing that when they initially took the script to market, they couldn't raise that large budget. It may have been a blessing, because what they ended up with is brilliant and beautiful. So
yeah, exactly. I'm very happy. It's sort of like one of those happy mistakes in a way.
That's right.
When we're talking about the big budget and how they sort of lost that as well, and that the spouse was originally going to be played by Brad Pitt, how do you think that would have affected the film?
Oh gosh, a whole other film. So try to visualize Scarlett Johansson and Brad Pitt, kind of beauty overload, as this alien couple. And it would be so different, and we would not have the personal journey that we have, because it would have been divided among the two of them, because it would have been more like the book, and where she has a kind of a companion, and it's divided, the attention is divided, whereas just focusing upon her, you can't, in my mind, that's where all the power is. You can't beat that. So I understand. I mean, I read that, and Glazer has said that he knows that Brad Pitt was disappointed, because they talked at length about what they were going to do together on this project, and then come to find out they weren't going to be able to do it, and he was disappointed. But as it turned out, the film is special in a very different way.
So then, if we're going into a little bit more of the meat of the cast, so this idea of it being composed of actors, non-actors, passers-by, and then Scarlett Johansson being this huge movie star, how does this show on the film between the characters relating with each other?
It's amazing to me how well, how seamless the film is, considering it's actors who were hired, like Scarlett Johansson, obviously, and a few actors who had lines to say, so they were all hired. And then there's non-actors who were hired, such as the woodsman in the third act of the film, who follows her. They brought him on because they just happened to meet him because he owned some of that land, and they met him and they thought, we like the vibe, we think he can play this character. So he was recruited as a non-actor, which is interesting. And then you have Glaswegians, you know, people who just happen to wander onto the area where they're covertly shooting, and she pulls over and says, "Excuse me, can you tell me the way to the M8?" You know, so, but amazingly, all these different people at different levels all somehow blend in, and it's never obvious. I mean, with those people that were on the street that you know pulled over and talks to, so real. It's like so documentary like. It is real, so it gives the film the tone of realness, so that the scenes that are dialogue and rehearsed, somehow it makes them more accessible to you. Somehow the whole film becomes more accessible, even in its moments where it's the most artificial, the white space, the black space. You're open to it, because these scenes, these real scenes, these documentary like scenes, somehow have brought you into this world so deeply that you never think about, wait a minute, this doesn't really look real. Or, I mean, it's like you're there. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Let's dive into the black space, because I love the way you speak about. Tell me about your connection with the black space.
Oh, the black space. The black space has something in common with the white space in the opening sequence for me, because with both, for example, I go into the white space in that early scene and I'm thinking, what is this? Where am I? This isn't a space. There's no walls, there's no ceiling and floor. It's just a whiteness, and architecturally it's impossible. So where is it? And then you have that same thing repeated when you get to the black space. It's a non-space, but it's even more intense in the black space, because then the space, as the characters move forward, as she moves ahead and they follow her, the men follow her, the space seems to stretch out. It has this weird sort of, it's like a combination of time and space. It's so unreal. And the feeling of utter alienness of the space really just washes over you, that you are in something you have never before felt or experienced. So they truly created something that will put you in the place of that man who has come to this place. Although, because they're so entranced by her, they seem to not notice the bizarreness of the scenario.
Yeah,
but it's all, you know, with the music and the visuals, it becomes this poem, and you're just going with it. So
yeah. And I love that whole thing of the music alongside it. And I think that you've touched upon how a brilliant composer can really make or break a film, and that Glazer had so many people to choose between out of these amazing composers that were offered to him. And how did he go about finding Mica Levi?
You know, he did have people submitting music and pitching to him the biggest composers that you can think of. He heard, you know, he was considering, but he knew that he told Peter Rayburn, the music supervisor, I don't want this grandeur, and I don't want anything I've heard before in any film ever. I want a genius in a bedsit, he told Peter. And so then he plays this tape, and he's just a few seconds into it, 10, 20 seconds into it, and he says, "Stop, who is this?" And it was Mica Levi, or I'm still not sure I'm pronouncing her name right, but who had a band, Mikachu and the Shapes, and she had been performing, and she had started composing at the age of 4. She had already performed in London, and she gave them this tape that was something. It was what Glazer asked for. It was his dream. It was something he had never heard before. It didn't resemble or sound like anything he'd experienced as music. And it's her viola and her sounds that she uses, and he said, "This is it. This is the one." And it's that, I mean, you can hear that score. It affects you the same way when you watch it. It's nothing you've ever heard before. It is as beautiful as it is creepy, as menacing as it is beautiful. I don't know. It's a magical score that pulls you to all sorts of places in your feelings and your mind. I love the score. I listen to the score often by itself. It's almost like, if you listen to a score by itself, sometimes you go, gosh, how is it even possible to watch the film and hear the score? But as you can see, it's a perfect marriage.
So why do you think Glasgow? How do you think shooting on the streets of Glasgow affected the actual film as well?
Well, Glasgow definitely, and just to mention Scotland, I mean, in general, the book, Michel Faber's book, is set in Scotland, and it was proposed to Glazer, you could shoot this film anywhere. And he said, it was never an option for me to shoot this any place but Scotland. That was a definite. I was never going to veer away from that. And so Scotland was it. And then Glasgow, that was that something about that city, those streets lent themselves to that covert filmmaking, and that documentary like feeling worked so well, because the place itself is so real. There are many places here in Los Angeles, and I imagine where you are too, that are too Disneyfied. They're too artificial. They're you would see it as a set. Whereas there's something about that downtown Glasgow by George Square and those streets and those buildings. It's never going to be anything but real. So it's perfect for this covert filmmaking, where you have a town that looks real. People are going about their business. They're shopping. They're selling things in stores, and you're shooting them covertly, and it's real life.
And it is that whole idea of moving within the natural world and creating this alien concept within our natural world and its own surroundings.
Yes, yes.
And I do like when you're saying that the white space was modeled off sort of a bouncy castle, because that then creates that airy lightness there, whereas the darkness is underwater. It makes it heavier because the water weighs you down, and being in that then does add those extra elements of darkness and weight against the lightness and the air.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's very nicely put. Yeah, I love that. There's a lot of beautiful contrasts in there. The white and the black, and the city, and then the nature that she goes to in the second half, and the way she is in control in the first half of the film and completely out of control in the second half. So many dialectics in the film that play with us in that way.
Yeah, it's just those layers on layers, which is
Yeah.
why it's so good and has this long-term effect.
Yeah.
So then when we're talking about engaging in the natural world, in your book, you talk about the insurance company ordering the crew to evacuate during the blizzard, and Glazer later recruiting that small team to go out and shoot the storm. Tell us about this.
Yes, so a blizzard, right? To begin with, when they first started scouting locations, I have to mention these people because they are so critical to my research.
Please
That was
do.
Eugene Strange, who was the location manager, and he's going out in the summer with his wife, and they're scouting Glasgow in Scotland, and it's summertime and it's beautiful, and he's picking these locations. Never did they dream that they were going to end up shooting in the dead of winter, where they end up in a blizzard. They were thought it was going to be summer. Okay, it didn't happen. But it's months have gone by. It's now December. And okay, so there's gale force winds, there's a blizzard, there's snow. The trees are literally being uprooted. That's how bad this blizzard is. And and the the bond company comes and says, we have to evacuate. This is too dangerous for the crew. So it falls to Nick Hextall Smith, he's the first AD, to shut down the production, which of course Jonathan Glazer was not happy about, but it had to be done because it's dangerous. So they shut it down, they start to evacuate everybody. And then Glazer says, we can't not shoot in the storm. So he goes out with Daniel Landon, the cinematographer, and a couple of other people. They get into a Jeep or a couple of Jeeps, and they go out and they, quote, shoot the storm. And from that, you get some of the most beautiful footage that they used at various times in the movie. You get, for example, that shot of the wave that goes up like a curl, it curls around itself, what they call a Catherine wheel. It's like wave and spray over the cove. And that is like one of the most beautiful set pieces in the movie. They shot that during the storm. And many other things that they were able to use in different places that they got because he went out and he's a little cowboy, goes out in the Jeep as opposed to a horse and gets the footage. So yeah, that's some beautiful, beautiful things they did. But there are so many creative people who contributed, you know, in so many magical ways. Everyone, the sound designer, Johnny Byrne, he went to visit his father once in Scotland, and he got the sound of a bird. He was just randomly collecting sounds and got the sound of a bird. And that's what they use after she leaves and escapes her journey in the middle of the film, and she goes out and she's on this road and then is overtaken by fog. She's wandering on the road and she's standing there kind of lost, surrounded by fog. And then you hear this bird screech, and that's the sound that he randomly got the day he was visiting his father. So this is some creative team that all brought to bear, you know, their best game.
And that a lot of Scottish people I know's favourite part in the film, just seeing that. And it's because it feels so at home to them, because it's something that they do experience.
It's Scotland. It couldn't be anywhere else. He was right from the beginning. It can't be anywhere else. I have to shoot it in Scotland. He was right. Those instincts were right, because you know how it goes. They shoot everywhere. They shoot in Canada, Bulgaria, you know, wherever they can get the best deal. No, he shot in Scotland.
I would like to know, how has your reception to the film changed over time with all the wealth of knowledge you have had since you first watched it, say if you watch it again now?
If I watch it again now, you know, I watched it not long ago, certainly in the last 6 months, and I am in awe that as much as I know about how this film was made, and as much as I've talked to everybody about the finest details of it, it still emotionally grabs me from beginning to end. I never look at a scene and say, oh yeah, that's the scene where they had the guy hiding in the window and in the hallway. And, you know, I forget all of that. It just melts away. And I am grabbed by the throat, as my friend likes to say. And Catherine Hand, she's a producer. She produced Wrinkle in Time. And she says, a good movie grabs you by the throat and never lets you go. That's Under the Skin. And I still have that experience of it. thank heaven. And I mean, I've watched it countless times. So,
all right, final question.
okay.
Do you have a favorite part of the film?
My favorite part of the film. Oh, wow. I didn't see that question coming. I should have. So I'll have to wing it here. I guess my favorite part of the film is her time. Okay, I'll have to say two parts. Two of my favorite parts. Her time with who we call Quiet. That's his character's name in the script. Quiet is the man she meets at the bus stop who brings her to his town. And that whole sequence of their time together, because it's the time when her journey as a human is coming into its most intense phase. And so we get to see her hearing music and her watching television and trying to understand comedy. And then, of course, experiencing being touched, being kissed, intimacy. You can see the bliss in her face. And then, of course, the Mica Levi score captures the bliss. That is probably my favorite. See, that whole sequence of the film. And then another sequence I love, which is very sad and painful, but is beautiful to me too, is the very last moments of the film when we see she has now fallen in the snow. We see her on fire. And then the very last moments of the film are the camera goes up and it's as if we're looking at her last moments before she dies, because we see the snow coming down. So if she's lying down, she would see the snow falling and that would be the last thing she sees. And then we see the whiteness of the sky. And it's in that moment I somehow feel that she had an experience so life-altering, mind-altering, so emotionally fulfilling as a human, her brief human experience, that it is now ending, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful, and that beauty somehow is captured in the very last minute or two of the movie. And then the long shot, we see the smoke as she is going into the back to ashes. You know, beautiful. I love the ending.
I love that you picked those two scenes because for me, they are the most innately human moments in the film. And so when you're saying her quiet is sort of like the discovery of allowing yourself to feel, allowing yourself to connect with somebody. And
yes,
sort of her, it reminds me of sort of that book Remains of the Day. It's sort of her reflection of life, and she lived a life, and it sort of shows that. And again, just such a human way of putting it.
That's a really good comparison. It is like that.
It's just a lovely, poignant end.
Very perfect ending.